I'm taking her from you. You are unfit to be a mother. You are disgusting.
Ready. Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of The Why. I'm your host, Dylan Mullins, presented by, of course, All American Roof Pros and All American Heart Studios, because, we're the only sponsors that are paying for this thing. But today, I am sitting down with someone that I can already kind of tell is probably going to come at the minimum a casual acquaintance, but apparently has known a lot about my life, and I'm interested to start knowing about hers. Miss Lisa Rose. Lisa, pleasure to have you on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dylan. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So, like I tell everybody at the beginning of the episode, kind of give me your elevator pitch. Like,
sure.
Who are you?
Yeah.
We just met you on the street.
Yeah.
Let us know about you.
So my name is Lisa Rose. I own Salon Vivace and Forever Welded in downtown Mansfield. Kind of came as a fluke of how I decided, or how that came to be. We owned my husband and and another partner owned the building, and here we are. It was a salon, and someone needed to run it. I didn't volunteer. My husband told me I had to do it.
You got volunteered.
So, yeah, it's like, this is what you're going to do. And I'm like, oh, great. This is what I'm going to do. So I've been doing that now for about 6 years. I love the platform that I have in my community, being able to make individuals feel great. And we've done a lot of great things in there that we don't even talk about because there's no reason to bring that to light to the community, because we help homeless people feel their best. We get people ready from the domestic violence shelter.
That's awesome.
That can be able to go in interviews and make them feel better about themselves. So I love what I do.
That's super cool. Yeah. That's funny that you say that here at the beginning, especially. I talk about that all the time. Like, there are things that we do inside of our businesses that are we have side effects that end up obviously creating more business, but we don't do them for the reasons that people think. Like, we're not doing it to create a platform. No. But I would also encourage you, because I had a mentor tell me, like, we still have to highlight our wins and like let people know what we're doing, because it allows us to do it more.
I know.
It's hard.
I know it's hard because you don't want it to come across as, oh, look what we did for this person, and we did it for, we might not, obviously we didn't charge them anything, but it's like, I don't want to embarrass them and their circumstances, and it's just a touchy situation sometimes.
Absolutely.
So, we tried our best to make them feel like they're just a regular client in the salon, and we're just taking care of you.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. So let's kind of walk down that path a little bit, just because you kind of already touched on it.
Sure.
So were you in the hair care space or the cosmetics space, or what space would you call yourself in? I guess.
You know what? I literally worked in retail. I was a manager, district manager for probably 20-ish years. Let's just say that.
Don't look a day over 29.
I know. I'm like, oh. I traveled a lot with that. I managed probably 60 to $100 million districts. Had probably 3,000 to 4,000 people that technically kind of reported to me, not directly but indirectly with their managers in the buildings. I did that for a long time. I loved it. I love interacting with people. I love the pace, the different things that you could do every single day. But yeah, I started there, and we just got to a place where our kids were getting older, and it's like, what do we want to do? And our kids started getting involved and active in so many different things, so I decided to stay home.
Absolutely.
So that only lasted a few years, and my husband said, meet me at the office. And I was told he's like, this is what I need. I'm like, okay.
Fair enough.
Jumped right in.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I would say more of a business, retail type of world is really what my background's at. Yeah. HR.
But, at the end of the day, like I tell everybody, I think that anybody that has a business acumen that is able to run one business, business is business.
Absolutely.
It's people, process, and product. Like, can you get those three? Marcus Lemonis says it the best. Like, can you get those three to function well together and come? How do you think that carried in? Because, like, you went from this obviously like a large scale company where a lot of corporate structure and probably a lot of BS along the way, because that's what corporate structure brings along, which it needs. Like, there's a reason why it's there. Nobody just put it there because they felt like it, right?
Right.
And you went to a small, mom and pop type. Really, especially probably when you guys were starting, because obviously any business when you're starting is hard to get your feet off the ground, and then you start running and all that good stuff. How was that transition for you? Because obviously you had those couple years where you were just mom, which is great, which sounds like it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
But how was that transition for you, like from the business, like the big business world to really small business world?
Well, my husband's always owned his own business, so I've never, I met him and he owned his own business for the last 20 plus years. He's owned his own business. So I would say, I always knew that neck of the woods because of that and the trials and tribulations that comes along with having a small business. But leaving corporate and going into my own small business, I was always really passionate about developing people and seeing them win and seeing them get to the next level. And I think that played an incremental part of me being able, not being a cosmetologist, but me being able to step in and like really see what drives people, what makes them tick. And I think I have a really good gauge on people. I can read people really well. I know I can figure out like, this is what they need. This is what they need. That's what they need. And I can manage them all differently to get them to the next level.
Well, it's a good trait of a leader, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's a difference between a boss and a leader. Massive.
Absolutely.
In my opinion. And I tell my people all the time, like it's my job to figure out how to get you to your goals. Mm-hmm. And you may have the inputs in the wrong area, and I just got to help you shift those around to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I don't even know if you could train somebody.
It's really hard. I think that an individual either has that or they don't.
Yes. Leadership is inherent, right?
Absolutely. It's not, I don't want to say it's not learnable or teachable.
It's an acquirable trait.
It is. But I think you either really have a great knack for it or you just don't.
Well, and I think for me, like my parents got divorced when I was really young. Mm-hmm. So then I had to learn how to read people because, now I got this new stepmom, stepdad, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And like you become, and they got divorced when I was 6. And so like I had to learn how to kind of read those people. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming, just kind of talking off camera, that your story is probably a little bit similar in that aspect. Because if we realize it, our identity is formed between our ages of 6 and 11.
Absolutely.
So if you realize all the shit that happened to you between 6 and 11, you can be like, hey, you know what? I know why I'm jacked up. You know what I mean? And then you can figure out what makes you tick. So I did want to dive into that side of you, and I don't mean to do it so early, but I think that it's a good integral part of the story.
Yeah. So my mom, typical 70s kid. My mom got pregnant when she was 16. Okay. My dad was 16. Okay. Here I come. So I was born in 72. And, I don't even remember my mom and dad being together. I do remember, there's some flashbacks of my childhood. It just wasn't a good relationship. I remember, my dad, trying to, kick in the door, trying to get into the apartment where my mom and I lived. And, just crazy little things like that. I would say, when I start to really think through of my mom and dad being together, there's only probably maybe 5 times as a child I can remember that happen. I remember that I went to a babysitter that my dad somehow was acquainted with those people. And they would have to drop me off really early in the morning. And it was a woman, and I don't remember her name, but I think this is probably childhood trauma because I just kind of
start burying shit. Yeah.
Just shut that down.
Yeah.
But her son would always come to the door and open the door for me, and she was still sleeping. And he would take me up to his room. And as a child, I was molested.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I was probably about 5 years old. And it just always, and I remember laying there pretending like I was sleeping, just pretend like you're sleeping and maybe it'll stop. So I remember that, I couldn't wait for the woman to wake up so I could go downstairs and eat honeycombs. I remember there was always honeycombs at her house.
It's weird the stuff that you remember.
It's crazy. It just always happened. And every single time I went, I was always afraid. But I remember probably a really big highlight of my childhood was my grandma. And I always say that if it wasn't for her, I probably would, who knows what I would have ended up.
Yeah.
She was my literally angel on earth. But I went to her house every weekend. I did the whole Friday night, come on, honey. And I got to hang out with her and my papa. And it's Saturday night, get in the bathtub, put curlers in your hair. We're going to church on Sunday morning kind of thing. But I remember my grandma always saying oh, honey, are you hurt? Does your butt hurt? And things like that. And then I would always say, no. Because the babysitter told me, or the gentleman there, I shouldn't even say gentleman, the monster. How about that?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
He's like, if you tell your mom or your dad, I'll kill them. And
as a 5-year-old, you can't compartmentalize, you can't think that somebody doesn't have that capacity, right?
Absolutely. And I was always terrified. I'm they're going to kill my mom and dad. I cannot tell my mom or dad. And in hindsight, as I got older, I thought, man, if I would have told my dad would have went to prison. My dad would have murdered him.
Yeah, because I have a 9-month-old little girl, and if that happened, like, I just couldn't even fathom the thought. Like, I can't. It's hard for me to want to. Like, I can't put myself in your situation. But as a father, I sit here and I think, like, and there's so many of those stories that dads don't know about because we're afraid of something to let them know because of how their reaction's going to be. You know, and some of it may have been fear of you getting in trouble. Because as a child, you don't know.
Right.
You know, as adults, we can look back and in hindsight go, wow, if I would have just... But we don't know. God, you did say you were going to drop some heavy stuff on me. I got a lot to go through. You're like freaking... We're at a quarter of the childhood. You know?
So, you know, that really, like, I think for me... and I don't remember that babysitting, and maybe, I don't even know. I could have been there for 5 years, or I could have been there for 5 minutes. I don't even know, because I feel like I just try to block that part of my life out. But I do know that I was ashamed of it. I was embarrassed by it as I grew older, and I was very aware. Never forget it. But I never shared it. I never shared it with anyone before. I mean, I probably carried it around for 40 years and never told one person. And the very first person I ever told was my youngest daughter. And I remember she was sitting next to me and she was just sobbing. And she was probably, I would say 16 or 17. And, you know, it was very hard for her to hear. And I started to tear up thinking about it because she was devastated for me.
Well, and we want to think that our parents, I mean, if you put yourself in your daughter's shoes, we want to think that our parents are these invincible beings, right?
Right.
That they're you know, they're as good as they possibly could be. And that's like, you know, I just want to go through a couple things here. So your parents got together when they were extremely young.
Oh, yeah, kids.
So babies raising babies.
Yeah.
You know, because my parents were 20.
Yeah.
They were both 20 when they had me. And same exact scenario. Like, I'm 30 and I just had my first kid. Like, or I'm 31 now. Golly. I'm 31 now. And but I had my first kid when I was 30. And like, you know, my wife's 26, 27. So like, we're so much more mature. Like, we literally have talked about, like, and we didn't meet each other until we were later anyways, but like, we talked about that. Like, God, if we would have had kids when we were in our early 20s, like, holy shit, I could have had an 11-year-old by now. Like, we have a little girl that hangs out with us a lot, and I'm like, she could be our kid.
Sure.
And like, very easily. Like, that was what my parents were doing, right? But there's so much, like, we're not even, you know, women's brains, they've developed a little bit faster. I'll give you guys credit. 24-ish, because I'm a big psychiatric guy. Like, I like to understand what makes us tick and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, guys are 26. So for the first 10 years of your life, your dad wasn't fully, like, he wasn't even the person he was supposed to be yet.
No.
Like, he was still figuring shit out, and, you know, and then now all of a sudden he has to be thrown into this grown-up situation and stuff like that. But then we go back to, like, the daughter, and I'm sorry, I'm doing a Trump week.
No, that's okay.
We go back to the daughter situation, and, you know, like I said, you put yourself in a position where you look at your parents where they're, you know, because I'm sure you did a great job of protecting your kids.
Absolutely.
Especially with the situation that you were dealt.
Absolutely.
And you probably, how did that create, I'm sure that created a lot of trust issues for you with your babies. How did you guys navigate that?
I wouldn't even say that. Even men. Like, I remember, like, relationships.
Yeah.
As growing up, I was very, like, not 100% trusting of anyone.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, you know, I just always was like, had this little bit of a guard up with people, like, what's your intentions? What's your intentions? I'm ready to go at somebody, you know?
Yeah.
And I already had that personality anyways. I'm like I got that fighter in me. And it was, honestly, it was the way I was raised. And we can go into that again of, like, all the other things after that happened. I mean, you would think, like, oh gosh, she already overcame a lot. Nope, there's more folks.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just think that, you know, at some point you just got to be real with yourself. You know what I mean? You have to, like, dig deep inside of your heart, and sometimes I think, you know, I was raised in a very religious family. You know, I went to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, church camp, teen camp, the whole 9 yards. And I remember I questioned a lot because I'm like, well, how do we know God's real? Because, you know, in my mind, as a 13-year-old, I was thinking of 5-year-old Lisa. And how could God allow that to happen to me? Well, where was he when I needed him the most? And I, you know, in hindsight, I think about that. You know, I lost my mom when I was in my 20s, so I never even had to have a conversation with my mom of
this is
what happened to me.
How do I handle this?
Right. So I never got to share that with my parents, that happened to me.
And I agree that, the young man that did that was definitely a monster, and I can relate to that. But also too, and I may be picking a scab here, but like if we look at common things that happen, especially with young people that do that stuff, typically they were molested.
Absolutely.
So then you have to go back to like, where did the cycle stop for him? And then, proud of you for stopping it, right? Because you could have been some form of a monster. Because I think that, oftentimes we get men, and it is a lot with men because it just there's a lot of biological reasons why, right?
Sure.
But women also end up becoming monsters in their own right, and to overcome that, like, that's super cool for you, and breaking that cycle. And then, I'm sure there are other cycles that you were able to break. But Lord have mercy, we're freaking 15 minutes into this thing.
Well, and I will tell you, just my upbringing it's a very volatile upbringing. Both of my parents were addicted to drugs. My dad really wasn't a part of my life a lot. My mom ended up with someone and shot up, and they did all the lovely things in life. I remember I think I was 9 years old, sitting in front of the TV, watching cartoons, the big box, and like straight out, I was like, yeah, watching cartoons,
Yeah.
And I remember the door got kicked in, and there was 5 officers that came in. They all had their guns pointing directly at me, and I just sat there and I froze. Which I don't even know. I'm like, did I know that instinctively? Like,
Yeah.
like, do I know that like my parents or my mom and my
You would have had to have probably acquired that somewhere.
stepdad or somewhere? Do I know what they're doing is illegal?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
and I just sat there, and one of the officers came over and just kind of like grabbed my elbow a little bit and told me to stand up. And he took me into another area of the apartment that we lived in and kind of stood in front of me, and he was facing, like I was in his back, I remember. And he told me, he's like, you just stay right there. And I'm like,
Okay. Yes, sir.
yeah. And then I remember like the coffee table was like full of drugs, and they're like going through the house, and I think they arrested like somebody that was there with like my mom's boyfriend at the time. So, and my grandma was like devastated because we were living in Texas, and she's like, just please come home. Just come home. And really, I mean, she wanted the safety for my mother, but I had a sister that was just a newborn at that point. But she remembers nothing about the bad times because everybody got their life kind of together before she was old enough.
They were
to
adults
know.
at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They were 25, 26 at that point.
So, like my mom, well, that was later in life. My mom still stayed in that environment. And then, she ended up getting back into church, and she's like, whoa. And then the stepdad went away, and it was just my mom, my sister, and I. So, but, in the in-between times, I mean, I started out on McPherson Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I lived there for, the first, I don't know how many years of my life. And then we ended up in Little Kentucky.
That was an upgrade.
Yeah.
Upgrade.
I'm like, woohoo. And then we got another upgrade to Roseland. So, I really have a very diverse background. By any means would I ever say, I don't think of my childhood as like thinking when I tell people where I'm from, they're like, oh my gosh, you were poor. Like, I don't really ever remember feeling that way or thinking that way. Because my grandma lived in those areas.
Yeah, it's funny when we have, because like I said, my parents were young, so I can relate 100% because my parents had me when they were 20. Like, even if they had gone and got college degrees and went and did all, because that's what you did back then, right? Like,
right.
We talk about kids all the time, like, don't go get a college degree, it's stupid. And anyway,
right.
That's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, that's dumb. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But either, like, we had a great ecosystem around us, which I think is what probably saved folks like you and I. Mm-hmm. I wasn't nearly, like my parents weren't nearly as bad, but very volatile situation as far as like them using us as a pawn, right? And things like that. So I can relate as far as like, yeah, we weren't, like we didn't go without, but we weren't well off by any means.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
At least for a very, very big majority of my life. Mm-hmm. How, God, there's so much. Sorry, I'm not drawing a blank.
I told you I was going to tell you.
No, I appreciate it because there's a lot here. So with that, like, because there's a cycle, right, of trauma, and like this is the shit that we call generational baggage.
It is.
because it's stuff that we either get to choose to leave behind or continue to carry, but at the end of the day, we have to pick something to do with it, right?
Absolutely.
How did you find yourself like navigating through like not falling into that cycle of like getting pregnant? You know, maybe you did. I don't know, like, and all that good stuff, and then like falling into the drug addictions and things like that, or some kind of addiction.
Sure. I will tell you, my my mom's second husband, he beat her severely. My sister was little. She was probably like 2 or 3. So she doesn't remember him doing that. But I remember one night my mom came home and she was like a cocktail waitress or something. And he was mad and whatever. And they were fighting and my sister was crying. And I came out to tell my mom, because my sister and I we always shared a bedroom. No matter wherever we lived, we always shared a bedroom. But I remember thinking, I have to go get my mom because my sister's crying. And, you know, so I opened the door, and as I opened the door is when we had the good old, like, nice little rotary phones, you know. I seen my stepdad, like, he had a hold of it, and he grabbed it, and he just, like, smashed it into my mom's face. And my mom's face just, like, you know, blood gushing.
Bloody part of the body, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, right. And I remember being a kid being like, oh!
Yeah.
And he heard me, and he started to come towards me. And, you know, and I heard and I ran in the room and my sister was crying. And I remember our bed, we had like a full-size bed, but it was like kind of up against like the side of the wall. Yeah. And I remember there was I like pulled it and I like pushed my sister down in there and I like laid there because he wouldn't touch me. He wouldn't ever touch me because early on there was like a freak accident. He didn't even mean to do it. We were like kind of playing and my leg was under a couch and he picked me up and he broke my leg. And my dad was just like this hothead, like, you know.
Your dad was a protector.
So my dad literally beat the crap out of him. Because he thought he's like, oh, you broke my kids.
Once again, I can relate to where dad's like, thought process is.
You know, he was just playing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he did it intentionally.
But we want to protect our kids.
Right. So I remember my mom being so angry. And she's like, look what your dad did to him. And I'm looking at his face like, holy shit, look what my dad did to him. That's horrible. And I thought it was bad. Yeah. But yeah, so I knew he wouldn't touch me, and he knew he wouldn't touch me because my dad would kill him. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. But you know, they all had drug problems, and they had to get away from it. My mom got clean. She got divorced, started going to church again, but I still at that point I think I was like 13. What a bad time.
Yeah.
I've already seen all of that. So as a kid, I was like,
and you're already who you're going to be.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember like conversations with my mom, like sometimes like, she would like try to mother me. And I remember being like a 16, 17-year-old kid, turn around, look at her, and I'm like, you already messed up my childhood. Make sure you don't mess up my sister's. Huh. You had your chance with me. You lost. Yeah. You know?
So you think it forced you to grow up?
It did. Because and my sister will tell you the same thing. I was her mom. Early on in those years, then my mom with jobs, and my mom just made poor choices of, she got married again, poor choice of a husband, unfortunately, my sister has a whole other story that she could tell you on that note. But, I was the one that always was there to protect her. I was the one that stood in front of everyone and was ready to like take on the world. But I remember thinking like, when I was pregnant with my first child, I never really did drugs because I was terrified of doing drugs because I seen what it did to my parents. So I didn't really want to go down that road.
Yeah.
I was a typical 21, 20-year-old, 22, 23-year-old kid. I'm like, yeah, I'm going out.
Yeah.
So did I probably partake in a little bit too much alcohol? Probably did.
Most of us have.
Yeah. So, but I think, I don't know if I don't want to say that's part of being that age, but, I think there's sometimes you just try to just like cover the hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But I lost my dad. My dad had a cocaine problem. Heart exploded. He was driving himself to the hospital when I was 24. And then 3 years later, I lost my mom at 27. She had a hepatitis C from shooting up when she was younger. All choices that they made for drugs.
Yeah, it's a choice.
So I remember when I had my first child, and even before that, I thought, I will never be that kind of parent. I will never do that. I'm not going to say when I had my first child that I was the perfect mother.
None of us are.
Because, I'm like, okay, I know I was 27, but I'm like, we're kind of doing this together, buddy, you and me. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but you're going to tell me if I'm doing it right.
I'll never forget my mother-in-law saying, "Didn't they tell you how to take care of this baby?" I'm like, no. No, they didn't tell us shit.
Yeah, there you go.
They're like, "Don't kill it."
Yeah.
Like, they made you watch a video on like, "Don't beat your baby when it's freaking crying too much." Like that's literally it. Like that's all the hospital did for us.
Right. If you feel upset, just lay the baby down and walk away.
Just walk away. Yeah, that's the only thing they tell you.
Yes.
They don't tell you jack about that kid. No.
That's so true. But yeah, I just remember, I was always resentful. Really not towards my dad, which is weird, but more towards my mom.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you continue to put us in these situations. And I was very resentful to her. And I remember when she was dying, I looked at her and I said, and she knew it and she apologized. She's like, I'm sorry. And I looked at her and I'm like, I do forgive you for what you've done. Because I had to let that go. Yeah. I was losing my mom and she knew she was dying.
But you can't hold on to that stuff.
No. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know that I probably was just a pain in the ass a lot of the times. I said, but and I just explained all these things. And she's like, I tried to fix it. I know. I'm like, I know, but you didn't really fix it. You just tried to overdo the mother thing when you should have just sat me down as, a 13-year-old, pretty much like a 25-year-old, and said, I'm sorry that all those things happened. I'm sorry that I put you into that situation. And I think, that's probably the difference. She never did that until she was dying. And she's like, I'm sorry I wasn't always perfect. And that's how she left it.
Yeah, it's hard though. Like, one of my favorite. Are you practicing Christian today?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I don't care either way. Like.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up, so like one of my favorite sermons that I've ever heard at church, and I relate it so much in my life, is like because obviously as followers we're supposed to be disciples and go out and find other folks and then try to lead them to the gospel, right? Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite sermons I've ever heard was, in order to lead someone to Christ, you have to meet them where they are, not where you want them to be.
Absolutely.
And what I took from that is like, perspective is everything. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy, especially in that situation, for us to be like, and you as a mother and knowing like, and me as a father even, like me knowing all this stuff that I know now for my childhood and all this stuff and wanting them to just be like, well, you could have fixed it. Mm-hmm. You could have just freaking stopped using drugs. You could have just done this. Like, right. You could have asked me if I'm okay when I'm going to the babysitter. All this shit, right? That we could just be like, but we don't know the exact perspective in those moments. And that's what's hard. Mm-hmm. That's what like that extra piece of humanity that's like, just, you want to just like grab their neck and be like, stop being stupid. Like,
sure.
But you can't. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know, like, I think about it all the time, like, well, maybe you have this perspective too. Do you remember what your life was like? Well, I obviously, like, quite a bit on the trauma side, but, like, in that, like, I guess, like, 20 to 25, so you had first kid when you were 27. Like, do you remember what life was like before kids? Like, it's hard to, like, even think about it perspective-wise.
I just feel like I feel like maybe, I guess when I think about it, it's like kind of, but not really. I feel like maybe no purpose.
It's like blurry almost.
Yeah, like what
like you have this new thing, right? That you're like, this is everything that I'm working for and towards, and I'm just trying to make sure that like my kid is okay. You know?
Right.
It just becomes foggy, right? Mm-hmm. But then you think about it, and like our parents all had that. Mm-hmm. They had a life before us, and some of them got a little less of it before we were kids, and like, so when you start thinking about that, you're like, well, shit, like, you know, and even like my grandparents, like my parents all the time talk about how my grandparents were like raging alcoholics, like all four of them, like I freaking got it from all sides, like, and I'm like, yeah, probably should watch alcohol, like, you know.
Do you want a drink? Yes.
Yes. But they talk about that, and I'm like, well, shit, like I don't ever remember them being like that, and like I'm sure even your grandparents probably had like this whole life.
Oh, my grandpa. Ooh.
Yeah. And, like, I'm sure, like, as much as we want to think our grandparents were these perfect people, like, they probably still fucked up a lot of shit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's why it makes it so hard, because, like, we know what they did to us, but we don't know the shit that they're dealing with that someone did to them.
Right. Yeah.
And like that forgiveness piece is so hard sometimes to just look at them and be like, you know what, I genuinely, like, wholeheartedly, it's not lip service, I forgive you.
That is hard, especially when they mess you up a little bit, you know. And I will tell you, the only person in my life that has never let me down was my grandmother. She was always my constant, very godly woman. We just lost her in May.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, you don't. She was 93 years old. She lived a beautiful life to the day she died. But I will tell you, if it was, I mean, she literally, God gave her to me to protect me. If it wasn't for her, I really don't know what I would do. I would have done in life. Well, seriously.
How much, let me ask you this, because this is something I've kind of been wrestling with.
Yeah.
How much peace did you feel when she passed? Did you feel peace?
Yeah.
Because we feel sad for the world, right? Like,
yeah, I'm sad for the physical part of it, but it wasn't, I mean, she had dementia the last, probably 13, 14 years. But still, I mean, she would come in and out. I mean, there's some funny stuff. Like, I remember one time I went to the
dementia, it's not funny, but like,
oh, yeah.
That's my trauma response, is like to make fun of everything.
Same.
So like, I'm just
Same.
Like...
So I'm sitting there, I walked in, and I remember she was laying there in the bed, and I walked in, and she was like, and I sat down, and she goes, "You look just like my granddaughter." I go, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." I go, "Huh." She's like, "What's your name?" I said, "Lisa." She goes, "Oh, her name is Lisa too." I go, "You don't say." She goes, "Wow." I go, "Yeah." And we're looking eye to eye, and she looked away, and she just was looking up at the TV like this. Probably like 2 minutes passed. "Lisa, when did you get here?" "Oh, I just walked in."
Yeah.
"You were sleeping when I walked in." "Oh, I must have dozed off." It's okay.
No problem.
So, but little things like that, those bring me happy memories of, of her. She, but I will tell you, as a child, I mean, I know I referenced it earlier, like people were like, "Oh, you didn't have anything growing up." But I never really thought that. I felt like I had so much.
It's perspective, right?
Yeah. Like, listen, I was in Roseland, and that was before they had a sewer system, right? And like the ditches out front, we all know what the ditches were. And, I remember like playing in the garden, laying under the grapevine, picking grapes out of there, going like barefoot, walking through the front, through that little ditch up front. My grandma would be like, "Get out of that ditch, get out of that ditch." And I'm like, "It's not wet." And it's like, as a kid, you don't think you're walking through.
Yeah, you don't know you're walking through shit. Yeah.
But literally, and we just sit out there, we'd have our feet in it, and sometimes it would be wet. We didn't give a crap. And we'd play on the roads, and I was just this little stringy blonde-haired little girl, just dirty and having the best life ever. I mean, I don't ever remember ever thinking in my life, "Wow, we're really poor," or "We don't have anything," because I felt so rich with love.
Yeah, it's
in there.
My grandmother, my dad's mom, we just lost her in March, and she.
Sorry.
No, once again, back to that trauma response thing. I'm in the Dead Grandparents Club. That's what I tell my wife all the time. Because she has 3 of the 4 left. I'm like, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Like,
you just wait.
Yeah, you just wait till you're in the Dead Grandparents Club. But, she had dementia, and then she had a brain tumor that also like progressed it really fast. Ugh. And like, we didn't really know like the full scheme of things until like the very end. But it was funny because like she would remember the most random stuff at the random, like you say that like that about the dementia thing.
Yeah.
Like she would absolutely be disgusted with my dad. She was pissed at my dad all the time. When I'd walk in, she'd be like, "Hi, baby, hi," just complete 180. She never was mean to us grandkids, but her boys, she was for lack of a better term, she was a bitch. Like, that's just the way. But like, you have to laugh about it, because if you don't, like, the alternative is not that fun, Mm-hmm. And but I asked about the peace thing because, like, when my grandpa passed in particular, that's the one I remember. Like, just he kind of went on his own terms, and like, just I knew where he was going. Same thing, long life. Like, there was no suddenness to it. He got to say his goodbyes. He had coffee with his boys the morning before. Like, if I could think of a perfect way to go, although the cancer wasn't fun and stuff like that was the perfect way to go. you know. So that's why I asked about that.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, Dylan, I have to tell you, this is what happened. So she was, they had her really like on morphine, and she wasn't talking or anything. She was just laying there. But I remember I was there. I went there all morning, days and days. We sat and, just was there with her, letting her know we were there, reassuring her we were there, reassuring her that it was okay to go. And I literally just sat by her side all the time, and I kept getting in her face. I'm like, you can go. Papa's there.
Yeah.
Mom's there. Everybody is there. There ain't nobody hardly left down here that you're friends with. They're pretty much.
You ain't got no
waiting.
more friends down here.
Yeah.
Just go.
Yeah, they're waiting for you.
Yeah.
You got a better group up there than down here. Get upstairs.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting there, and I'm like, okay, well, I've been here, and I have kids, I have grandbabies. I'm like, I have to do some things. So I remember I leaned over, and I put my forehead against her forehead, and I said, I'm going to go, and I'll be back in about an hour. You better wait for me. So I left, and I got like 5 minutes down the road, and my phone rang. And I went back to the nursing home, and I walked in, my family members are in there, they're sobbing and everything. I walked in there mad. I got in her face, I'm like, you just had to do it right then, didn't you? You just had to wait till I left to go ahead and let it go, didn't you, Fern? And, but it's like, that's just like, I don't know. And again, I'm like, is that your way of protecting me? Like, you're like, I don't want you to be here while I go. And I used to tease her all the time as a kid. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do when you die. They're just going to have to just throw me in the grave with you. That's how tight our bond was. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I always would tell her, I'm like, I don't know if I can live without you. And she's like, well, you're going to have to someday, honey. But my grandma, it was so funny. It's like, she had this like, the sweetest personality. Like, she never talked about anyone. And if I said something that was a little off, she'd be like, honey.
She wasn't a gossiper.
No, she was so sweet. But when she got dementia, she was like a little bit of a firecracker. Like,
she was getting it all out for the last 70 years and living okay, right?
So the nurses would have to call me, and they're like, hey, we need you to talk to your grandma. And I was really the only person that could talk her off the ledge. I'm like, hey, listen. And I would always have to say, they're my friend. I had them come in there, and this is what they're doing. Don't pinch her. Don't hit her. Like, she's like, well, okay, honey. Okay. And I'm like, tell her that you're sorry. Honey, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were Lisa's friend.
That's the, like, dementia. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Genuinely.
Yeah.
It's such a nasty disease. Like,
it is. It was really hard for my oldest son to deal with my grandma, because they were really close.
Yeah, it was hard for, like, I don't live life with regrets. Mm-hmm. But there's some things where you just like kind of pick a scab. And I'm like, man, I just wish I would have went a little bit more. You could always say that. Like, even if you were there every freaking day, like, you're still going to have, like, that's the...
There's still going to be something.
Yes. That's the realization that you just kind of have to have about life. Like, there's not enough hours. Like, you can't make that stuff. My problem was, like, prioritizing things over... I actually did I'm not like woo-woo. I did a breathwork exercise. Have you ever done any of those? So we had this guy come in, and it was like a Brazilian breathwork exercise that releases, and I've never done a drug in my life. Like, I'm the guy that's like, not smoking weed because it's a gateway drug. I can go into that detail if you want me to, but it is 100%. Like, I don't give a shit what somebody says.
Right.
You're chasing a high. Anyways, so like, there's a breath exercise that you can do. It's a coordinated breath exercise where, like, you hold your breath and then, like, you do some heavy breathing, and it's a very interesting thing. It's the only time that I've ever done any type of thing like that. And I had an out-of-body experience. I literally saw myself 10 years prior. And I had a business fail, and I had poured a bunch of time, energy, and money into it. And just like, it was on the brink of suicide. It's a long, convoluted story. But in that exercise, like, I told myself I was sorry. Mm-hmm. And like, it was the craziest thing, because like, you don't think that we ever have to forgive ourselves, because I tell my people all the time, you're the easiest person you can let down. You have to have an accountability partner outside of you, because we're going to let ourselves down all the time, and we're cool with it.
Right.
Like, we're just like, yeah, it's fine, because we do it every day. Mm-hmm. You say, I'm going to go work out, and you don't, and you just like, oh, it's fine. Like, you're fine. But if you have an accountability partner, somebody that you care about, your husband, your wife, whoever that is, that's a different story. But it was this weird out-of-body experience where I just like saw myself, and what it came down to is like, I had lost 3 of my grandparents at that point, and like, I didn't take their phone calls as much as I should have. I didn't go see them as much as I should have. I didn't go to dinner. I didn't do these little detail things. And that was a big eye-opening experience for me. And I tell people this all the time. I'm like, you never see a U-Haul followed by a hearse. Like, it doesn't happen. Like, stop worrying about the material shit and start worrying about the time that matters and devoting that time that matters. But there's so many people that don't do that until they're at the end of their life. You know, I'm sure when you were in the corporate world, there was probably a lot of time that you got robbed of.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I missed a lot of things of my oldest son and my youngest daughter. I missed a lot of the things that they did because I was working. I was literally out of town for nights. And I remember, I mean, I worked really hard to get where I was. Didn't have a college degree, and I just hustled to get there. And I think at that point, that's all I wanted. I wanted it so bad, and I worked so hard to get it. And then I finally got it, and I was like, wait, I don't want this.
Yeah.
This is not what I want.
It's crazy once we reach the mountaintop, we're like, it's not as cool as I thought it was going to be. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself overcompensating for the lack of things that you had in your childhood with your kids, like materialistically?
Of course. Because I feel like, and I think every one of my children would look at you and say, I shouldn't say I feel, I know they would. They're like, my mom loves me like crazy. And my mom is crazy. And I know that if anything were to happen to me and if I was in a situation, I'm like, I need you. I'm in trouble. I would show up in whatever capacity I needed to. I'm like, what are we doing? Do I need to bring a shovel? Or do I need to bring a gun? Or do I need to bring money? Or do I need to bring, what do I need to bring?
Yeah.
A truck? What do you want?
What are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah. So they always tell you, like, there's no doubt in their minds that I would be the first one on scene.
Do you think that, because this is something my wife and I struggle with, because, like, obviously, like, we're doing well.
Yeah.
And neither one of us had we had good childhoods. Like, there's no doubt about that. My wife's very renowned in the horse business. She does phenomenal with that, and that's a whole thing. She's still in it today, and she's nationally recognized for that. And
oh, that's awesome.
You know, my parents, I actually, at a retreat I had a guy ask me this, and it was the first time I ever verbalized it. He said, "Were your parents present?" And I had to say no. And, like, my parents were always at ball games. They did that part of it. But I never, like, they were working a lot. We were with Grandma and Grandpa a lot. Like, I actually, as a child, would seek out to go spend the summers with my grandparents because of the toxicity that was the relationship in the beginning with them. And I was the oldest, so I knew, like, much like you, I saw that shit. I was used as a pawn. And now my parents have a phenomenal relationship, and they're great grandparents and all that good stuff. But we struggle with the fact of, like, okay, we have all this, like, resources as far as, like, monetary goes, but also we know that the struggle is what made us who we are. So how did you find yourself balancing that with your kids?
I think it's, you know, I will say our kids have never went without, but I think that they also they've all kept themselves in check of, it's not mine.
Yeah.
Maybe not the youngest, because he's only 16.
The baby always gets spoiled. Baby always gets spoiled.
Man. And his personality is just like mine. So everyone's like, oh, you know, like oil and vinegar. And I'm like, no, like fire and gasoline. That's us. But, you know, my husband always looks at me and he's like, he's just like you. Personality looks like me to a T. Very witty, can say something like that. And you're just like, where in the heck did that come from? But, yeah, I mean, but they all know that, you know, especially the three oldest ones. I have a stepdaughter too that I love dearly. She's just, I've been with her since she was 9. So, but I think all of them understand that the things that they had, it wasn't theirs. And if somebody's like, oh, your parents have money, they're like, well, it's not mine. I have no money.
Yeah, I'm broke, bro.
like they give me lunch money for school, okay? But, you know, I think that we instilled our children to work hard to get to what you want. They've watched my husband with his own business, and having your own business, there are highs and lows. I remember
a lot more lows than there are highs.
That's right. Like. And I remember, like, there were times with my husband that, you know, we had to look at my salary like, okay, that might do it because I'm losing it. I'm like, you know, you said something earlier about, you know, losing things and like suicidal. My husband at some point he was so down. I was terrified. I'm like, oh my, if he hurts himself, what am I going to do? And I was terrified constantly over that span. But, you know, it's how you rise above it, continue to like clench to the top with your, go to the top. But I think my kids have always kept themselves in check as far as it's not mine. And they'll take it whenever they want to or see deemed that it needs to be taken. They've all worked hard in their own rights, doing whatever that they do. The three oldest ones are, my two oldest ones are, Celeste and Tristan are both married and have children. They have great jobs. My youngest daughter, she's an RN. She's on her own, getting ready to go back to school. I mean, so they're done. I mean, I don't want to say they're done, but it's like if any of them were down and out and needed something, we would help them.
Yeah.
But you're on your own.
You don't have to worry about them. Type of thing. No, that's good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the stance that we've taken is like, I'm going to tell my kids from day one, once, obviously my daughter can't talk very well right now, but I've probably even said it to her. I'm like, this is mommy, daddy money. This ain't you money. And quite frankly, I'm renting it from God. Like it ain't nobody's.
That's really true. It's like, it's just here for, it's just temporary.
It all is, trust me.
Like,
it goes away tomorrow.
That's right. My husband's like, man, we spend more than we make. And I'm like, wow.
That's crazy.
I don't even know how that happens. But yeah, I think that, the children have really got a good grasp on it. My grandbabies don't have a grasp on it, but that's totally fine.
Trust me, my mother will be like, hey, we were thinking about getting, and it'll show up at her house, or like whatever it was. We need a walker. Oh, yeah, it's already on its way. Like, what? No, we were just like talking. Like, I just stopped telling her stuff. I'm like, nope, no.
Yeah.
But
I think that both of my daughter-in-law and my oldest daughter, they would tell you that I'm a spoiler.
Yeah. That's my mom too, and that goes back to I think some childhood stuff of like just wanting my mother had a great relationship with her grandma as well, so like I think that there's some of that there where they just want to cultivate that as much as possible, like y'all want to cultivate that as much as possible, but I think too it's like some of that lack of in childhood and making sure that they don't go without type of thing, and,
right.
and that, and would you say that? And obviously, you still have a 16-year-old, so like you're not done. You're not out of the woods yet.
Thanks for telling me. We call him the sneaker. He snuck right in there at the end. I mean, he's 16, and my youngest daughter is 23. So that gives you a gauge. She's almost 24.
He was a newsie.
Yeah, he sure was. but he's kept us young, and I love him dearly.
But have you found yourself like trying to find your identity outside of being a mom? Like, have you consciously worked on that?
Kind of. I really want to because a lot of my friends are there, and I'm like, friend,
yeah,
can I come over? I want to be on your side of the fence, But I guess I just really keep thinking to myself because I know as a parent how quickly the time passes.
Yeah.
I can remember sitting in graduation ceremonies and thinking, I remember the first day of first grade on the bus, and all of a sudden they're walking across the stage.
Yeah, it flies. It really
does.
Yeah.
And then they're getting married. They're having children, and I'm like, my baby's having a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like when you start thinking about stuff like that, I'm like, I really just am relishing in this moment. Do I look forward to when my kids are all grown and my husband and I? Yes, I do, but I'm living in my moment right now.
That's why the babies get spoiled, because you're cherishing lasts, and you cherish them maybe a little bit more than you did, right?
Yeah, I mean, even my youngest one, Bronson, I'm like, I really am just like, I don't want to rush it because I know how quick it happens.
Slow down for it, for sure.
Yeah, so I just want to like take it in because I know I don't have that many years left.
When I've talked to a lot of folks in different walks and stages, and that's a big blessing for me. But I'm actually working on a book called Identity Crisis, which is actually centered around that. So I watched, and my mom's actually kind of the centerpiece, because I watched once Lexi left the house, and she took off pretty fast. Like she was already with her associates and got her bachelor's by the time she was 20, and she was off to Texas and all that good stuff. And my mom went and adopted a shit ton of cats, and all of a sudden she's got fish and like all this other crap. And I'm like, she's compensating. That's really what it comes down to. Like, when you look at it full perspective, and I had a come to Jesus moment, if you will. I'm like, Mom, you got to find faith. Stop. You've been a mom for, she was a mom for 30 years. That's all she knew. She was a mom, and she was worried about providing for us kids. And now she does a little bit, now the grandbabies are around, it's a little bit easier for her to cope with that, right? But I encourage folks, like, especially young couples, I'm like, look, remember what started it, which was you and the love for your partner. And, you watch all these people that, like, they get to the end of raising kids and they get divorced. And you're like, what in the,
right?
But that's because their identity's wrapped up in being parents.
And they have no idea. Like, all of a sudden your kids are gone. They're looking at each other like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to have communication with. I can't even have a conversation. There's no communication.
We're not talking about kids anymore. We're not talking about ball practice. We're not talking about all this
Right.
other shit.
Right.
How have you and your husband navigated that?
You know, we make an effort. So literally just this past weekend, I'm like, okay. So we went down to Columbus. I'm like, everyone's like, oh, we went to the new Butcher and Rose restaurant for lunch because, you know, it's
The dinner menu's a little too much out of my price range.
So we did that, and then we for Christmas I ended up getting like out at Mohegan. They had those like tree houses.
Yeah.
Rented a tree house for the night, and we went and we did that, and we had a great time. My husband had a horrible week at work, and he's like, "Gosh, I didn't think about work one time."
Yeah.
And we try to do things like that. We have a place in Florida. And we try just the two of us to go. It's hard, you know, with having one in school. And he's in sports. He plays, I mean, literally he just takes up every single season with all the sports. So, you know, we don't want to miss anything. We want to be there for him. And, you know.
But you still try to carve out that time. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's so
Yeah, it's
crucial.
hard.
Like, don't have a baby and just forget about who made the baby, like, or what made the baby, the relationship, right? Like, when I talk, you know, I do some public speaking, and I intentionally have people introduce me as, first off, as a Christian, then as a husband, then as a father. Like, I want that, and leaders last. Like, yeah, I lead, and that's my day-to-day job, and that's what I do, and I love what I do here. But, like, that should be last. I want my relationship with my kids to be over my relationship with people here at work. I want my relationship with my wife to be over my relationship with, you know, and I do that intentionally. Like I said, I've just been blessed enough to like sit around with enough people and at least like figure out, hey, what did you do wrong?
Right.
You know, and then be like, no, like make sure you still have a marriage. Like make sure you build your relationship with Christ. Like make sure all these other things are happening outside of what you're trying to do there. Because I boil it down to like, and this is really dark, and I pray to God it doesn't happen for anybody, but like everything can get taken from us. Everything.
Absolutely.
And like we only think about that as material, right? Like I tell people all the time, you throw me in a cardboard box, my wife and my kid, we'll be fine.
Yep.
Like we want our dogs probably. Like we'd love to have our dogs with us too. We're big dog people, but like you throw us in a cardboard box, we'll figure it out. But outside of that, like we're not in control of losing a child, losing our spouse, you know, all these other things. So if we don't have our identity in us, that's why you see like these people become lost, I guess would be the best term for it, when this stuff goes away. And like I said, I pray to God that never happens. I really hope that I outlive, you know, or, you know, that my kids outlive me and my wife outlives me and all this other stuff. I hope that she's got to figure it out. But also we have to have those conversations like, hey.
What happens if?
Yeah.
Right.
You know? And yeah, I didn't mean to get like super dark there, but like.
No, but that is true.
We have to place our identity in us. And that's why I try to center that around Christ first and then build all this other shit in that's crucial.
And we talk, I mean, material things, do we enjoy them? Absolutely. But are they important to us? Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I'm still the same person inside. I still feel the way I still love the way I love. And my husband, he feels the same way. Does he want to be successful? Does he work really hard? Absolutely. But you know what? Both of us, our family, meaning the two of us, and our children are the most important things in our lives. Nothing is more important than that. That little circle. And we tell our kids all the time, do you know who's going to be there for you someday? Not the kid that sits next to you in fifth period. That's your brother right there. That's your sister right there. That's who's going to be there at the end of everything. It's easy to hear that
stuff, right?
Right. But you've been like, even at your age, you're like, you know what, that is right.
Yeah, but I remember there were times in high school when I'm like, no, I don't want nothing to do with that dude.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're behind me, you know, and you're just like, nope, don't know who that is.
Right.
You know, but it's, you know, it is so true. And yeah, it's, you know, I don't talk to anybody I went to high school with. I really care less.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And you think about it, like at the time, you're like, you know,
we're friends forever.
Yeah, you're my bud. You're always going to be there for me, and you're my best friend ever. And we're going to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, you don't even talk to anybody.
No, because they become irrelevant.
Yeah.
And you know, it's if you're lucky enough to have one of those lifelong friends, it's great.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, family is pretty much everything. I mean, you even run it back to, you know, our grandparents. You know, my grandmother, your grandmother, my grandfather, any of them on their deathbed, nobody went and said, man, I wish I would have bought a nicer house. There ain't a damn person. Like, I put you on your deathbed tomorrow, you're not going, oh, I wish I would have made an extra $1 million at work. Nope. You don't.
No. There's nothing. And I think at a young age, I suffered so much loss at a young age. of what between my mom, my dad, and I lost my my grandfather, and but yeah, it's crazy when I think about everything. So, but I don't know. For me, I just always had this mindset of I'm going to make different choices. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do better. I'm not putting myself in that situation. I'm going to do this instead. And I've just always done that. And really, it kind of like felt natural to me because I seen what it did to my family, to my mom, my dad. And I knew I never wanted to be there. I never wanted to be that type of parent, that type of person with the drugs and the physical violence and things like that. And then, that kind of brings me full circle. And I think about, sometimes, and I kind of laugh, I'm like, I didn't really want to go into the salon. But, then I started thinking about it, and it really gave me a platform of the people that not only come in, but the people that work for me that have similar, not necessarily as everything I went through, but some of the pieces of that puzzle where I could look at them and just say, choose differently, because they're younger and they don't understand. Like, they don't have anyone in their life that's like, yeah, your parent did that, but let me tell you what you can do instead. So they call me kind of like the mom. They're like, she's like a great mom. So I just kind of mom everybody there. But, I think that, God brought that into my life for that little bit of that platform of just like helping others.
Well, there's no such thing as coincidence. It was all written.
Oh, for
when we
sure.
were here.
Absolutely. God knew he was going to put me there. He knew that somebody there really needed me. And I would love to think that I've been impacted people that work for me.
Well, and I would encourage you to think about that. You're not in the salon business.
No, I'm in the people business.
Yeah, I'm in the people business too. Mm-hmm. I don't like roofing. Roofing's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not. There's nothing fun about it. But I'm in the people business. I make people happy. Like, I think if more people took that perspective on life, like, their life would just be so much more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Like, people, like, that's, once again, go back to strip everything material away. Mm-hmm. Like, heaven forbid one of our homeowners' houses burned down that we put a brand new roof on. Like, that it's gone.
Right.
It's gone. But it's how we made them feel in the process and how we were able to enrich their life. It's no different with the people that are able to work for me. Like, how can I enrich their life? Like, I tell people all the time, when you come to work for me, I don't care if you're here for 6 months, 2 years, the rest of your life. I want to just be able to put you a positive in the right direction.
Right.
Because that was the difference maker for me. That's why I didn't kill myself. It was positive things. It was like people waving at me at the freaking gas station, giving me a smile at McDonald's, whatever that little thing was. And once I realized that, Dr. John Maxwell talks about it. Phenomenal leadership coach.
I
Awesome.
love him.
Oh, my Lord. I've met him 5 times.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, he's an amazing human being. Actually, my wife and I were baptized by, do you know, he has an organization called Equip. It's actually, they just had their Million Soul celebration about 1.5 years ago. Oh. But they brought more people to Christ than any other organization. Documented. Like, they have the, because like a lot of people claim, and I'm not saying they haven't, but they have documented that they brought many people. Anyways, R.D. Saunders, him and his wife Shelly are amazing people. Kind of like the same scenario. Like, we called her Mama Shell while we were with her. And anyways, he baptized my wife and I in Punta Cana in the DR. And just like some great connections we've been able to make along the way with that organization. He's actually the president of Ohio Christian University now.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, I went off on a tangent.
No, it's okay.
But
I'll do that too.
Trump weave. Dr. John Maxwell talks about the elevator principle. Either you're picking them up or you're bringing them down. There's no in between. Like, the elevator never stops. And if we can take that perspective on life, it's a crazy, like, just freaking be a light. Like, you don't have to go buy everybody's coffee that you see at Starbucks, but you can say hi to them.
Absolutely.
Like, you have resources. Some of those are monetary. Like, yeah, we donate a lot of money and shit in our community and we give back, but like, just giving your time or just a positive enlightenment or something, even this podcast today, like being able to give somebody a platform, that's positivity, and we're able to build people up through that. And if more people took that approach on life, like, how much better would the world be? Like, yeah, we have our own politics and how we think that things are, but like, at the end of the day, we're all people. And like, if we just step back and go, all right, I don't care who you voted for. Like, how can I just help you be a better person?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure that those people that you're bringing into the salon to help out, you're not asking them, who did you vote for? What's your politics? No, you're like, hey, how can I just help you get along a little bit better?
I think I read something, and I actually I shared it a couple of times. It's, at the end of the day, we just need to be kind to each other. And, I think it's like, think of it this way. the pilot's driving the plane, and it doesn't matter if he lands in a red or a blue state. You just want him to land the
You
plane
just want to
safely,
land the damn plane.
right?
Exactly.
So it's like, it doesn't really matter. We just want to land safely. So it's like, it's like a general reminder of like, just be kind.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. I don't care your politics or my politics, but be a nice human being.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing better than kindness. You know, I'll tell you, I went through like a year and a half of just, you know, my health was very poor. And in the salon, I didn't realize like how I've just not only impacted the stylists that work with me, but also like all of the clients, because I take my time and I walk around, I talk to every client, hugs, they bring me like little candies, holidays,
they become
and
friends.
things. Yeah, they really do. And they're like, oh, she looks bad. Is she good? And like, or they'll tell me like, oh, you look so much better. You get a little bit of meat. You're getting some meat on your bones. You're looking better. And I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, it's very important because they know my personality. They know as soon as they see me, I'm not going to treat them any type of way. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your religion is, how you vote, or it doesn't matter to me. I just want to be kind to them. I want to be a nice person to them. That's my genuine personality. You know, I don't know. I think that there's so much that we can do in this world. We can do so much in our own community.
I was going to say, just here in Mansfield, I mean, you know, I live in Norwalk now, but like we're still very deeply rooted here in Mansfield, and that doesn't change anything for how I operate this business. And, you know, I back on the politics thing, I told people constantly, I'm like, you need to stop caring less about who's in the White House and who's in your house, because it's going to affect who's in your house more is going to play a role in who's in the White House. Because at the end of the day, you know, people are like, you seen gas prices? I'm like, dude, I ain't gonna watch gas prices in probably 20 freaking years. Like,
right.
And I'm, well, not 20, but 10 years or 5 years. That's probably about the correct time frame. But either way, it's been a long time since I cared about gas prices. What am I gonna do? Walk? The alternative is not that great.
Right.
You know,
I still have to put gas in my car to get there.
So you bitching about it, all that's doing is bringing people down.
Absolutely.
All you're doing is creating negativity. Like we have, you know, if we look, and especially as Christians, but just as people in general, like manifestation is real. It's saying you're going to do something and things like that. But if we take that and take that into truly the power that we have, you bitching about things is just going to continue to bring negativity. Have you ever noticed that somebody that just constantly complains and you're like, dude,
it's hurtful.
Yes.
Right? And in groceries, like, do you know how much I paid for eggs? I'm like, get chickens.
Yeah, I mean, there's alternatives. Like,
Right.
do you want, like, all right, is the pain of having chickens worth the price that you're saving in the grocery
Get
store?
a chicken.
Yeah. Like, my in-laws have chickens. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You know how much feed is? And then you got to go out and freaking turn on the lamp. And they're telling me all this shit they got to do. I'm like, nah. They're like, why don't you take eggs from our house? I'm like, because you guys apparently need them way more than I do. Like, I love y'all. But, like, we're good. Like,
I try to tell everyone, like, I went to the grocery store and I'm like, just come out and take a drive down towards my house. There's little signs up everywhere.
Yeah.
You can get a dozen eggs for $2.
yes,
Just come
there are
on
people
out.
selling them. And I don't know how that, like, I'm all about making a buck, but, like, I look at that financially and I'm like, there ain't no way you're going to catch me raising damn chickens for $2 a dozen.
Is that where you get your eggs? I'm like, Kroger.
Yeah, I'm still going to the store. But no, it's true though. Like if we just change our perspective on life and just go, you know what? I'm thankful for what I have. Yeah, I may want a little bit more. I think everyone should want more.
I think it makes us work hard.
Yes.
It gives us a strong work ethic, and I think that's important. And I feel like that's one of the things I feel like all of our children can tell you. Both of our parents have a very strong work ethic. We've instilled that on them. It didn't even matter. It started in school. Like you work hard, and when you work hard, you get what you want. You want that grade, you get that grade. You want to get a scholarship. If you want to go to nursing school, you're going to have to do these things to do it. So, nothing was ever like easy for them, I would say.
I call them hand ups.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hand up, but I ain't giving you a hand up.
Right.
You know.
We pushed him hard.
Yeah.
And we have one in the house still, like I said, and we push him hard. Yeah. Sometimes I feel bad because, he is the baby, and like there's a little bit of that probably mom part of me. It's like, okay, this is the last one. Even though he drives you crazy, he's going to leave.
Yeah.
But, sometimes I'm like, okay, that's being a little hard on him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just relax.
So you get softer with your baby. I fully can understand that.
You do.
What do you think, like, so obviously, your husband and you both are entrepreneurs, and that's good for you. Well, thanks. And you guys work together pretty often? Or?
I mean, we kind of like not close. But we are like, yes. the business are all together.
Yeah.
Because it's all under one kind of umbrella, so to speak. He kind of just lets me do my thing. Doesn't really say a whole lot about it. Because I've grown the business, I would say 3 times over since I've taken over. It just continues to grow every year. And literally, I'm like, I'm not even sure how this is happening.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
I just think, but I think it's what my expectations are. I work really hard, and I know my work ethic, and I know I can't hold somebody else accountable to work as hard as I work, because that's just not fair. But I try to bring everybody to their highest potential.
Yes.
And that's what I do. I would hope that at the end of the day, I would inspire them to be the best versions of themselves, either as their occupation, their social life, in their child's life, in their relationships, anything. And they all know. I'm like, listen, this is because of God. God has given me this platform and this opportunity. And I feel like from a very young age, he's had his hand over me. And, and again, I say, he gave me my grandmother. I'm 100% certain she was chosen for me. But, she was such a massive guidance of, making sure that was kind of always my touch point of, okay, got to make sure that, we're still in the service of God.
Purpose, yeah.
Yeah. So what is this doing? Like, how can I, bring that into this? And how can I let people know without saying, well, you know what? You need Jesus.
Yeah. Those are the worst.
I
understand their purpose, but those are the worst Christians in the world.
Yeah.
Not that they're a bad Christian.
I know.
It's just they don't understand the concept of it. And maybe, and it sounds like in your career, you've had kind of a sales background. Mm-hmm. Me as a salesman, I'm not pushy, but I'll gladly have a conversation with you. Like, you want to start talking about what your needs are? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's Jesus. Like, we can start to, peel the Band-Aid back a little bit and just kind of see what's going on there.
Right.
And I'll just kind of start having a conversation with you. I'll answer your questions along the way. I think that if more Christians took that perspective, you'd watch us be better disciples. But there's so many people that are just like, you just need Jesus. Like, I get what you're saying.
Right.
Right. I understand your perspective, and maybe that's how you were brought in.
Yeah.
But if you really look at it, somebody sat down with you and said, what are your questions? How can I help you answer those? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a funny thing. You said something with, you said you're a hard worker and it's hard for you. You can't expect that out of other people. And I tell people that all the time. My mom's the worst. She works here at the office. I'm like, you have to stop expecting you out of other people, because they will let you down every single time. But I liked what you said about being able to inspire them to be the best version of themselves. And that is, I think, what's so crucial. That was what separates good from great when it comes to leadership. What do you think that drives you guys to want to do better? Because it sounds like, as far as if we talked about it, and I may be overstepping here, but it sounds like materialistically, you guys are good. Yeah. Much like kind of we are here. I have no reason to grow this thing. Mm-hmm. I could probably coast for the rest of my life and be okay. There's things I'd miss out on and things like that, right?
Sure.
But very much so in the similar vein, probably very similar for you guys. So what makes you guys continue to want to strive for more?
Yeah. I would say just my own person, because I don't want to speak for my husband, but I just think he's so smart, and intellectually, I don't think he could ever turn that part off. He even tells me, he's like, when I retire, I'm probably still going to work 3 or 4 hours every morning. Then I'm going to go work out, and then we're going to go to the, over to the pool, and we're going to hang out, be in Florida. And then I'm like, what about my grandbabies? And it's the first thing coming. What about my grandbabies?
Priorities are a little different, right?
I know. Everyone's like, you guys going to be Florida residents? I'm like, absolutely not. Because I'll break that rule real quick. I'll be home once a month seeing my grandbabies, or coming and getting them and bringing them to me. But I would say, I love that connection with people. I truly do. And I don't think I could. I think that continues to drive me. I love that, just trying to figure people out. What makes them tick? What inspires them? What do they want? Because I truly just want the best for everyone. I want them to again, be the best version that they can be. And so I love that part. I love that part of my job when I was in the retail world, and it just transpired right over into where I'm at currently. And I love that part of it. I love that interaction. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. There are times I go home and I'm like, oh, I'm just drained.
Oh, yeah, you have those days still.
'Cause I can't make everyone happy. I can't make every customer happy. But it's I have a genuine heart, and I really want everyone to be happy at the end of the day that I interact with. So,
would you agree that money is just a byproduct of doing the right thing?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if more people understood that. Like, it took me a long time to understand. I'm sure it probably did. I'm sure it was probably hard for everybody.
Everyone.
to
That's
learn.
that's huge.
Yeah. But once you realize that, you're like, well, shit, if I just do the right thing, like, everything will take care of itself.
Absolutely. And on hindsight, and we can talk from both sides of that coin. It's like, ethically, I'm thinking, okay, and I put myself in the perspective. I always put myself in someone else's perspective of how they feel, that's how every situation. If somebody's not happy with something, I'm like, well, how would I feel if that happened?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is what we're going to do. And sometimes I overcompensate for those because I feel like, I want to gain your trust. I want you to know that I'm a good business person. I'm ethical, and I want you to be happy at the end of the day, truly happy. But on the other side of it, I think sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to battle this out and try to get something for free. And I will stand my ground a little bit with that. Like, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, I've had a couple people throw back in my face, like when I stand my ground with something and I try to go with what I think is morally and ethically correct. They'll be like, well, you're a Christian. I'm like, well, God also says to go to work for your money, and you're trying to steal from me.
Right.
Like, let's be honest about the situation if we want to go to that.
For sure.
We can go down that rabbit hole with Scripture if you really want to, but I don't think you do. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's like people think that, like, just because we're business people and we're successful, and they're like, well, you should just give all that money away. And like, no, actually, it says that I'm supposed to do good works with it, and there's a difference. And
Right.
sometimes those good works are donating and being able to contribute, but it's also taking care of my family, make sure my family has what they need, and providing for my needs. Yeah, I joke all the time. I'm like, if people, family-wise, because respectively, my families are very successful in their own rights. Like we've had our own battle with our own demons, if you will.
Sure.
But if I like spoke on their ears like what we actually do in revenue and like what actually goes on here, people would be like, whoa, like they can't even. And then you tell them what your goals are, and they're like, well, that just doesn't even make any sense. Like, you're happy. And it's like so important to find inner circles of people that you can trust to actually tell those goals to, and that don't think you're crazy, because dream killers are out there.
Oh, for sure. Right?
They'll hear your dreams and they'll be like, yeah, no, that's stupid. Why would you do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, and I think that's one of those things where it's like, don't put your cards on the table until you're ready to like really do it. Leave it like,
keep it a little close to the vest.
Keep it internalized. Keep it with the people that need to know to help you and support you to get to that. But don't go crazy with telling everyone, because they're very quick to be like, smash you down. Like, oh, I don't want you to see you do that. I don't want you to be doing something successful. I don't want to see you win,
Well, I think that's part of it too, is like they kind of start doing some self-reflection and go, well, why them? And once again, back to Dr. John Maxwell, he talks about, you want to do what I do, but you don't want to do what I did. Like, nobody sees, like, you talk about the struggle of when your husband was first starting his business and you guys are having to rob Peter to pay Paul to figure out how do you do this, and this, and, still make sure that you can provide for your family and all this other stuff. Like, nobody sees that. Nobody sees when I was making $0 a freaking month and, halfway scraping by with, what little business money I could get together and all that good stuff. Like, they see what I have now and all this stuff and material and, all these trucks and what have you. But they didn't see what got me there.
Right. And you remind me a lot of us. Very humble. We're very humble about any material things we have. We're very humble about it. We're not like,
I'm simple, man.
Yeah. It's like we're not out there like, oh, did you see my new car?
Yeah.
Oh, did you see my new whatever?
Yeah.
That's just not us. It's not our personality. Do we like nice cars? We do. Yeah. But I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody look at me and say, oh, we're just trying to keep up with the roses. I'm like, do I make you feel that way?
You should probably work harder then.
I'm like
that's where I get a little bit like my human comes out, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think my husband and I ever treat anybody like we're better than anyone else. We don't, ever. I mean, listen, I told you where I came from. I came from McPherson, Little Kentucky, and Roseland, okay? I'm like, it's not like I'm like, was was born like, Baron Trump with the golden spoon in my mouth, if you will. Like I didn't have that. I remember going to school and I got like one outfit before we started school, and that's it.
You got a new pair of tennis shoes and you were supposed to wear them the whole year.
Yeah, the whole year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and my husband, he had 3 sisters and shared a room with one of his sisters. It's like we both come from very humble beginnings. But it's amazing how people are so quick to point out material things when they don't point out the important things of what type of people we are. What kind of, what's this?
Yeah.
What is inside? What are you getting? What's the surface? So, and then I'm like, when you think about it, it's like, well, your surface is kind of ugly. So if you have to say things like that, so you are, you already have a bad kind of heart. So it's like, I try to be like, and I have before, like being really nice, like maybe we'll just like break through this. Maybe we'll just, and then at some point you just have to realize like, that is a bad friendship for me, and you have to step away from it.
Yeah, there's toxicity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, so my least favorite phrase in the entire English language is must be nice. I fucking hate a must be nicer. Like, you tell me must be nice, like, I probably want to punch you in the face.
Yeah.
And I internalize it very well. Actually, my wife, so my little girl was already spoiled. She's got a horse and a puppy, and like even before she was born. Mm-hmm. And we got a golden retriever stupidly 2 months before my daughter came. And
those dogs are really great, though.
No, I tell you what, it is my daughter's best friend. She's climbing all over it. She pulls her hair. She smacks the shit out of her. Someone's touching her, so she's cool.
Yeah.
But my
just want love.
Yes. So I told my wife works at a horse farm, and she gives riding lessons to kids. And one of the kids she was struggling with wasn't putting in the work, and parents. And this is kind of like hearsay, if you will, but parents are on the lazier side, like clearly not instilling good work ethic values into them, and tell them it's okay when they're not working hard and all that, like shit that boils my blood.
Same.
Because I was never like the best athlete, but I was like good
tried your
enough.
hardest.
I give you 110%, right?
Right.
So like it's same thing. Like I don't care how talented my daughter is, she's still gonna outwork everybody because you can outwork talent, but you can't out talent work, right?
Right.
So the puppy, and this is just a good illustration, the puppy was 3 or 4 months old at the time, and Tori was doing fetch with her and having her bring it back, and I guess this is my second least favorite phrase. Anyways, the mom comes up and goes, "Oh, the puppy's so good, how did you teach her how to do that?" And Tori, my wife, saw it as a learning moment. She goes, "Well, I'm going to explain to this child that I worked with her," and that's basically what she did. She's like, I worked really hard and worked with her and got her to this point where we're able to kind of teach her and all this stuff. And the mom looks back at her and goes, "Oh, you just got lucky." And then my wife's like, she called me instantly as soon as she left the barn. She's like, "Can you believe that someone said this?" I was like, there are so many people like that out in the world, unfortunately, that just think that this all happened by luck. They don't see all the failures that came along the way and the struggle and, the sleepless nights and giving myself stomach ulcers at freaking 25 years old and all the other shit, That's what it is. It's just shit. Like, it's just like, and it's every day. It doesn't matter how successful you are. You're still going to deal with it. Like, you think you're going to outgrow it and you're like, well, we're going on to something bigger. So now we got to do it again.
It never gets easier.
No.
The more and more you do, the more and more it's like, oh.
Yes. And if you want to, Ed Milet says it the best. He thinks that his version of heaven is when he gets, and this is actually what I think too. I think that when I get to heaven, God's going to go, "Good and faithful servant, welcome," all that good stuff, all the Bible stuff. And he's going to go, "Do you want to see what I made you to be?" And I'm going to go, yeah, I want to see that person. And I want him to look at me and go, almost at me, because I'm going to fall short. Like, I'm going to have shortcomings. And so when you said that about your husband, about how he said, when I retire, I'm going to still go to work. And, there were some talks in this space that we possibly were going to sell and, like, get a big chunk of money. And I was like, just invest it. And, I had this game plan, right? Right. I was talking to a friend. I go, I'm probably just going to retire, 35 years old, and sail off into the sunset and call it good. He goes, "No, you won't." And I said, "Well, let me live my dream. Like, just shut up for a minute, dude. Like, let me at least have this moment." Goes,
"Let me pretend like I'm going to do it."
And I said, "Why do you think I won't?" He goes, "Because if you want to be the ultimate version of yourself, you can't stop." And I'm like, "Well, shit, just shut up, dude." Like, I just wanted that moment. But, like, it is so true. And, like, I'm sure, your husband probably, because it sounds like he's a serial entrepreneur like I am. Like I'm always thinking of like the next thing and like what can I do next and how can I provide for my community? And like, you know, there's kind of a daycare shortage here, and I'm like, how can I be that guy? How can I? Then I freaking no business being in the daycare business, but I'm a business person and I know how I can make it run and function and adapt to people, and I know what the struggles and pitfalls are, and because I'm a dad and all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm sure your husband's probably.
So I'm hearing daddy daycare.
Maybe. No. I don't think it'll ever come to fruition, but like it was at a moment there was like, how do I make this work?
Yeah.
I'm calling people. I'm calling my sister who's a teacher in Texas. I'm like, hey, if I pay you, you know, more than you're making now, will you come run this thing for me? Because I need a face for it, and I'll run the business side of it. And like, so like, I'm sure your husband's probably that way, much like with the salon. He's like,
absolutely.
I need to solve a problem. I'm calling my wife. I think that she's the right person and the right fit because that's what leaders do. And it just never shuts off. You can't. But there's something in me. I don't know what it is. You know, I was the firstborn, and I had to kind of like help raise my siblings because my parents were, you know, young when they had me, and they had a bunch of kids at once. There's 5 of us total between both sets of parents, and so there's part of that in me. And then watching my parents struggle, and like you start to dissect all this shit, and you're like, why am I the way that I am? You know?
Yeah.
So
I think that for both of us, I mean, it would probably be a lot easier for me to be like, okay. But I'll have to find something because it just keeps me ticking.
well, and how many people do you know that retire and then they're dead?
Oh, yeah.
You ever thought about that?
Yeah.
Like you watch them and they're like, I'm going on this big retirement spree, and you know I've worked all my life, 40 years at the steel mill, and now I'm retired, and then 2 years later they're dead.
Right.
They lost purpose.
Yeah.
And that's really what the entire premise of this podcast was, is like, why can't we figure out like what makes us tick and what makes us who we are? Because if you put your entire identity in Lisa the boss, Lisa the wife, Lisa the mom, whatever those are, and then those go away. Because what happens, you're a successful parent. It sounds like you've done pretty well. Sorry, I don't know what the heck that was. Ian, edit that out. Anyways, but you're a successful mom, and what happened? You know, with your kids that are already gone, they're gone. Like, yeah, you still get to be mom. You never stops, right? Like the good parents, right? That they never stop.
No, they're still my babies.
They are.
Yeah.
But also, like, you know, they go and make their own families, and then they get to, you know, my mom. This really pisses my mom off, but I've explained it to her this way, and it's not that I don't want her to be part of our family, but like we get to choose. My wife and I get to choose who's a part of our new family because it's a marriage between us. It's not a marriage between me and her parents and her and my parents, and we get to choose to bring those people into our life. But you're a successful mom. Your kids leave. You're an empty nester. You know, and if you lost sight of who Lisa was, that's where we kind of start to get moldy.
Yeah. I still would have to get up and go do something.
Yes.
I mean, and it would be in some type of interaction. I don't even know, like, you know, we talked, you know, about selling the salon at some point, and the Forever Jewelry, we talked about taking it to an avenue of more of a training situation, wholesaler, because we've been doing it now for almost 3 years. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that for me, I will always have to do something with people. I will always have to have my hand in hopefully inspiring somebody to do the right thing, to do the best thing. Again, to be the best version that they can be of themselves. So.
Well, that could be as simple as volunteering at church. I mean, there's
absolutely,
like, people try to think of like these grandiose ideas of once they retire, and like just get involved in a church, get involved in an organization that means something to you. There's so many great ones here in Mansfield that I could list right now.
Absolutely,
and just get involved. Like, be something. Be a grandparent. Go to all your grandkids' sports games. I mean, I think that's what kept my grandparents ticking. They had freaking 14 of us. Like, there was always something for them to go do. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there was always a ball game. Like, we were all involved in some type of sport, and they had their week planned out around that. And it doesn't have to be something bigger than you. Like, I go back to my grandparents. I use an illustration where when I speak, and it's we call it self-worth over net worth. And I talk about my grandpa a lot because, you know, they had a little, I don't even know if you call it a 2-bedroom house on 6th Avenue that a lot of love was raised in. They died with probably about $80,000 in total net worth. I mean, I'm probably was worth more than them 5 years ago than they were at the time of their death. And I don't say that arrogantly. It's a factual information, right? Yeah. And but I look back and I go, they were the wealthiest people I ever knew. You talk about that as a kid and being rich. Like, that's where I think so many parents get lost in the sauce of, I gotta give my kids all these things and the nicest car, the nicest this and the nicest. No, be present. That's how you make your kids rich. That's how you fulfill your kids, and that's how you make them good people. And
Yeah, but sometimes being present is very difficult, especially for the child.
it is.
They're like, oh gosh, she hates me.
Yes.
You know, or oh,
But they'll look back on that and reflect and go, it was okay.
absolutely. And you know, I think at the end of the day, I think our 3 oldest ones will tell you, I get it. But you know, the youngest
they
one
do.
right now, the youngest one's like,
Because perspective is everything.
yeah, because he's only 16.
Yes.
So
That's
but
beautiful.
He'll get there someday.
Well, this was a really good conversation. I feel like we could go for another 2 freaking hours. But I got some other obligations I got to get to.
No, you're
here.
fine. Same.
Give you the last couple of minutes here. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you wanted to share?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I would just say, you know, for anyone that's out there that, you know, feels like I'm a product of how I was raised, choose to break the cycle. You have the opportunity. You have the willpower, and you have the decision. God has given us a reason, or given us the choice, or a gift of choice. Make the choice. Break the cycle. You can do it.
Absolutely.
So feel free to reach out to me because I'll help you.
I love it. We'll make sure to drop Lisa's contact information in the show notes of how they can contact you. And I really do appreciate your conversation today. And like I said, I think we could do 4 more episodes because I feel like there's a lot here to unbox, and I think we align on a lot of things. So I just want to thank you again for taking some time. You know, it's our most valuable asset, and I do appreciate your time today. And I know that this has some power to help at least one person, because at the end of the day, that's the goal.
That's all. If it helps one person, that's all I care.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you having me. Really
Awesome. Well, folks, I think there's a lot to digest today. You know, if feel like you're a product of your environment, you know, like Lisa said here at the end of the episode, there's so much in here that the reference points for you to think, you know, because I talk about it all the time. We all have shit. It all stinks. Guess what? It's not special. And we all have something, you know, my things aren't as bad in my perspective as your things, or vice versa, or whatever. And if you just take those and use them as a springboard rather than a weight, it's amazing how much different your life can be. So, you know, as I always ask, if you know somebody that needs to hear this message, if you got something out of today, please, please, please share this. And yeah, other than that, I ain't got nothing else. Continue to ask yourself, what's your why?